was after they left. But they worked on the initial. It must have been Senate. Yeah. In Virginia, I used to come up here with my dad and like read the stuff. Fairfax. Indiana, I guess was technically.
No, definitely. No.
Yeah, nice. It's actually like so close to it's not a long drive to here. Yeah.
Good afternoon, one and all. Okay, so thank you for coming. We're going to be quick today because some of us are heading, Patty and myself, are going to be heading to the White House right after this. So thank you so much to Senators Murray, Stabenow, and Stabenow, and Murphy for joining us. What did I say?
You got it. Took a while.
Took 3 times and I get there. Last night, the Senate took an important step towards averting a shutdown with good, strong, bipartisan vote to move forward with the CR. A clear signal that parties in both houses, majorities in both parties in the Senate, rather, want to pass this extension ASAP. If both sides continue to work in good faith, I'm hopeful we can pass a CR by tomorrow and avoid an unnecessary and costly shutdown. There's every reason in the world to make this an easy, uncomplicated, and drama-free process. I urge my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to work in good faith. What the Senate cannot do right now is mimic the House in its chaos, where a vocal minority of hard-right rabble-rousers want to bully their way into making a shutdown happen. Only in the twisted logic of MAGA extremism is it a disaster to extend funding. That's what they said. It would be a disaster to extend funding. They want a shutdown. And what will happen if they get it? VA offices close, food inspectors don't leave the jobs, nutrition to children is cut. All of these programs are at risk if the government shuts down, but to the hard right, a shutdown is precisely the point. They want to create pain and chaos for the American people in order to bully their way into getting what they want. But now, even many Republicans, I've been really heartened in the last few days to see that a good number of the more mainstream Republicans are rejecting the hard right and doing it publicly. That's a very good sign for this and for the future. The Republican majority can't get anything done over in the House because the hard right keeps sabotaging things on the floor, even their own appropriation bills. But the majority of the House, or many House Republicans, are just sick of that bullying as well, and they know how bad it is for their own party and for the country. If the majority of senators and representatives continue working in good faith, we're going to keep the government open. We're going to continue on the appropriations process. So, I urge my colleagues once again, let's work together, bipartisan, both houses, pass a CR quickly, avoid a shutdown and the pain that a shutdown would entail. Patience. Patience. I got 3 people and some more speeches, some more of my speech. But we will get to you. On the supplemental, as I mentioned earlier, some of my colleagues and I will be headed to the White House this afternoon to discuss the importance of the National Security Supplemental. It's of highest importance. It must be bipartisan. The work's not done on the supplemental, but I am really hopeful that negotiations are in the right direction. We are closer than we have ever been, and the sense of cooperation between Leader McConnell and myself and the leadership of both sides, you've heard what Senators Thune and Cornyn have said lately, bodes very well for getting things done. For the first time, I'm optimistic. For the first time, I think the chances of getting it done in the Senate are greater than not getting it done. This is good news. Democrats are trying very hard to keep this process going. And the amazing efforts of my Senate colleagues, particularly Senator Murphy, who was here, our caucus just gave him a large round of applause, deservedly so, a few minutes ago, and Senator Sinema as well. They've been working at this doggedly for weeks, as frankly, so has my staff and I. I must at least make 10 phone calls a day in regard to this issue, at least 10, from early morning till late at night. Passing the supplemental is one of the hardest things the Senate's done in a long time, but we've got to finish the job. As I've said before, history is looking down on us. Ukraine is already suffering from a lack of armaments. And if Ukraine folds, we're going to be suffering the consequences, not for months, but for years to come. Years to come. and it'll make the world a lot worse than it is today. So, we have to get it done. At stake is the security of our country, the survival of our friends in Ukraine, the safety of our friends in Israel, getting humanitarian aid to the Palestinians in Gaza, but nothing less than the future of democracy. So we can't come up short. We're going to keep fighting, fighting, fighting until we get this done. Senator Murray.
Well, thank you. Well, now that we finally have a spending framework which allows us to move forward on our full-year appropriations bills, I've been working around the clock with my colleagues in both chambers to keep this process moving as quickly as possible and write and pass the strongest possible bipartisan, bicameral spending bills and get them to the President's desk. After all, we are talking, remember, about negotiating 12 bills that fund our federal government and have huge implications for our families and our country's future. It is very critical that we get this right and pass the strongest possible funding bills, and soon. But as that work continues, we absolutely have to prevent a harmful government shutdown this Friday. So I'm really glad that there is a bipartisan agreement in both chambers on a CR to avert that shutdown so we can get our bills done. And I certainly hope that it is the last CR we consider. We took the first step to get this done yesterday, and I hope everyone will continue to work with us to get this wrapped in a quickly, timely way so that we can avoid a pointless, expensive shutdown and keep our focus on the pressing challenges at hand. Because we still have an awful lot of work to get done in a short amount of time to finalize serious appropriations bills free of partisan poison pills that protect key investments in our country's future. And as you heard, we still urgently need to take action on a supplemental that gets desperately needed support to our allies in Ukraine, Israel, and the Indo-Pacific, and provides humanitarian aid to civilians in Gaza. I will be joining leaders of both parties at the White House today to talk about how we can get this across the finish line.
Senator Murray, thank you. Senator Stabenow.
Well, first let me stress again that all of us want to get all of this done that Leader Schumer talked about. We know this needs to be done on a bipartisan basis, and that's what we do. We know that that's how we govern, is when you work across the aisle to be able to get things done. I do want to take a step back for just a moment, though, and look at President Biden's first 2 years with the Democratic Senate and House, who were committed to getting things done every day for the American people. We were and are committed to growing the middle class of this country, to taking on corporate interests, to be able to reduce costs. All of that is still, of course, a focus for us. But the challenge has been, since Republicans took the majority in the House, we've seen chaos every single day. Every single day. MAGA Republicans don't believe in governing, in solving problems for the people of our country. They believe in power at all costs. But having said that, I want to thank the Republican leaders that are working with us to avoid a government shutdown and pass the critical security supplemental. It is absolutely critical that we come together to address the serious problems at the border. We support that. We want to get that done. It's critical that we stand with democracies of the world and show leadership at this time of overwhelming humanitarian need. And it's critical that Congress do its basic job, just the basic job of funding our military and federal services that impact the quality of life of every American. So as usual, we are committed to working across the aisle to get all of these things done and move our country forward.
Thank you, Senator Stabenow. Senator Murphy.
Thank you, Leader Schumer. Reports from the front in Ukraine are dire. Many days, the Russians are firing 4 times the number of rounds that the Ukrainians are. That is a recipe for disaster, not just for Ukraine, but for the free world. And it is in our hands to make sure that Ukraine has what it needs to be able to keep this fight going and win this fight. But we can't waste any more time. I wish Republicans would simply support Ukraine and support America's efforts to defend Europe, but they have made their support for Ukraine conditional upon the resolution of one of the most difficult issues in American politics, the issue of immigration and border policy. I have not used the word optimistic yet in these talks, but I agree with Senator Schumer that we are closer than we have ever been before. Our goal is to give the executive branch new tools to better manage the border while living up to our values as a nation of immigrants. This is the most complicated area of American statute, and so it's not surprising that it is taking us some time to work out the final few issues and get those resolved into text. I will say it has been really important to have the administration with us in these talks. Secretary Mayorkas has been at the table for virtually every single one of our meetings, including our meeting this morning. I hope that we will have good news to deliver very soon on a supplemental package that will help give the President new tools to manage the border while helping to save the lives of millions of Ukrainians.
Thank you. Lisa, she's very nice and she doesn't push herself forward, and I saw her hand.
I mean, just from my fellow reporters, I kind of want a question. I hear what you're saying about the CR, the need to move forward now. House conservatives, though, are concerned about the debt, and they say they want a fiscal commission for Speaker Johnson's priorities, but they want it to have teeth. Can you agree to a fiscal commission on the debt?
Look, we have to get this done by Friday. The right-wingers come up with a new idea every day and say they have to have this, they have to have that. Speaker Johnson said he wants to get this done. I think he has the support of a good majority of the House, and I think we'll get it done quickly. Yes, so here.
Leader McConnell just said a few moments ago that he expects a Senate vote on the supplemental and Ukrainian bill as early as next week. Is that possible? Is that your goal?
Look, as Chris Murphy said, as I said, we are really making good progress. I am really pleasant. I'm in a good mood today, in part because we are really making good progress, and I've talked about how important this is for months. And so I think, I'm not going to set any deadlines or artificial, but we are making good progress, and I'm really optimistic we can get this done. Manu.
What does it say to you that Donald Trump is facing 91 criminal charges, yet poll after poll shows him beating Joe Biden?
Look, Joe Biden's going to be the next president, as he is the present president. If you look at the results in Iowa, I'm not sure 51% in a state where there was a turnout as small as it was, is that great a thing for President Trump? Yes.
Is the goal of the meeting here to try to triangulate on the speaker here? If you're getting closer on the border, and the idea that you have to get something, as Senator Murphy alluded to on Ukraine soon, that you've got to get something moving here quickly.
Yeah, the goal here is, frankly, to make it clear that things are changing in Ukraine for the worse, and that if we don't get aid to them quickly, the whole thing could turn around and be irretrievable. Go ahead, Bolton.
Leader Thune just highlighted that there were more than 800,000 migrants paroled in the country in 2023. Is that a problem, and does Congress have a role to lower that number?
Look, I'm not going to get into the specifics. We're getting closer and closer to a deal. The only way to get an agreement is bipartisan. You need Democrats and Republicans each agreeing, in the House and the Senate. Neither party can pass a bill on its own without bipartisanship on border or on much else. Last comment.
Are you concerned if you pass aid for Israel without conditions that it might hurt you in the upcoming elections with Democrats who are calling for a ceasefire, who feel like the military
Look, let me say
operations
this.
in Israel?
On conditions, our caucus is discussing it, and we'll continue to look for the best way forward. But as I've said, there are 4 goals that we have when it comes to the war in Gaza. 1, radically reduce the threat to Hamas, a terrorist organization. 2, free the hostages. 3, get humanitarian aid to the Palestinians in Gaza who need that help. And 4, Israel should try to reduce the number of civilian casualties. Thank you, everybody.